Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good morning. Welcome to Expat InSights. I'm your host Raju Manthian. Here at Expat InSights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats, and immigrants who have made Philippines their home. This morning on Expat InSights, we have a little surprise for you because a former host on this show has decided to host the host. That means he has thrown out a challenge saying that, Raju, you have been asking so many questions to so many foreigners for the last 3 years. It's time somebody put you in the spotlight and somebody challenged you as a person and the things you do. So my guest host, who's gonna try and probe into the deeper insides of me, Mr. Christian Clay Mendoza, Trade Commissioner of Mexico, more Filipino than Mexican. To you, Christian.
Thank you so much, Raju, and welcome to all of our audience. It's a pleasure to be here. A few weeks ago, I had the honor and the pleasure of being interviewed by Raju on my work, on my experiences in the Philippines, etc., etc. And we thought, why not turn the tables around this time and let the interviewee ask the questions. Our audience is used to having Raju ask all of his guests many probing questions, some personal, some professional, to get to know about their lives a little bit better. But rarely do our guests get to know a little more about Raju.
Oh,
so, Raju, welcome to your show, and let us get started.
All right.
Filipinos are some of the most well-traveled people in the world. From all social classes, from those who have the least to those who have the most. Filipinos love to travel. Sometimes they travel out of necessity, sometimes for pleasure. They love going abroad. They love seeing new cultures. They are very adaptable to new cultures. It is very interesting, however, to Filipinos when foreigners come to this land. Why did the foreigner decide to come here? How does the foreigner feel here? What are that foreigner's good and bad experiences in the nation? And Filipinos, I think, are very, very curious about that. So today, the first part of our interview, Raju, if you don't mind, is going to be about how you arrived in the Philippines and what your experience here has been since then. So please tell us the first time you came to the Philippines. When was it and what were the circumstances?
All right. The first time and the last time that I came here was in November of 1981. And the circumstances at that time was Marcos was still here. And Philippines had been a rich and a successful country in the previous decades of before the 80s, no? And 80s was a tough time, or late 70s and early 80s were a tough time for Philippines. That's when the martial law had been put on and removed. So I came here as a young man, and it was a country in strife, financial, economic, political strife. But being as young as I was, I didn't know this well, or I didn't understand it. And the reason of me leaving my home country, I came to study at the IIM, in Asian Institute of Management. I was 23 years old, and I wanted to study, travel, experience the world. And India at that time was also a struggling country in terms of its economic growth, in terms of opportunities. There was not much happening for people with ambition or people with a desire to travel and understand. So I had this little link here, a friend of mine, and I had heard about the Asian Institute of Management. So I packed my bags, I took a backpack, and I landed here in November 1981. And since then, of course, I've been here, and I've moved around the world, but this has been home for me.
So you basically decided to settle in the Philippines after you had finished your studies.
Well, I didn't come with the intention of settling down. I came with the intention of learning, traveling, experiencing. But as life moved on, as I tried to make a living, I made up a home, I met a lovely woman, I had kids, and then this became home. So part of it was my efforts, part of it was the panahon, as we call it in Tagalog.
Very good, very good. We see that you have learned the language, which is wonderful. And
Opo.
a lot of Filipinos will be very proud of that, that a foreigner would want to learn the language that they speak.
I think they'd be happy, not proud, because I am proud they are happy.
Very well.
Okay.
Very well. Point taken.
Yeah.
Raju, when you graduated from AIM,
Yes.
what was the first thing you decided to do?
Well, here's the story. I took the AIM test half a dozen times. I passed it all the time. I never took the AIM course. Took me 15 years until I got back into education, and that time I went to the University of Asia Pacific for my further studies. So now I am an alumnus of University of Asia Pacific. I came here that time, and of course I wanted to find a job, etc. I was an engineer by profession. There were no engineering jobs for young foreigners, at least at the time. So I began to work in the industry where most of my countrymen were. We were in manufacturing and trade and international trade. So I began to participate and work for a company, several companies in fact, in export sales. So I spent several years in export sales. Then I also changed jobs. I did some commodity futures trading, and then I went back into trade, and finally I built my own business in the late 80s.
Wonderful. That's a great story. Tell us a bit about your own business. How did you build it? And what was that business involved in?
Well, since the country was in financial doldrums, and since there was no external assistance for me, I had to build my business from scratch. That means you save every single penny, and then you learn the trade. Then you find a little need in the market, or at least in the flow of, in the marketplace, not really a need for the consumer. And so I put up this trading company, which was representing American companies, and I was buying goods, consumer goods, textiles and handicrafts, and other things that Philippines is good at making, and I was having them shipped to the U.S. So I started from scratch. I mostly rolled my sleeves up and did a lot of my work on my own, and the business grew after the first 3 or 4 years of struggle. You know, it had to be nurtured. It grew up until the last decade, up until the end of last century.
Okay, and then what happened?
Well, that period of late 80s and early 90s was also a period of growth for the Philippines. You were not here after President Marcos moved to Hawaii. It was President Cory, and she came in when the country was in tatters, really. And she coming from very little political experience, but she put the country together in terms of spirit and value, which she did, and we are proud of that. Then came in Mr. Ramos, and he also took in a very troubled country with very little resources in terms of power, infrastructure, systems, and the old school, the old culture that existed. For his time, it was a peak in business for Filipinos. Many large Filipino corporations today that you see, companies like SM or the real estate companies, Mega World and Phil Estate, these sprouted and grew. Even small businesses, a company like French Baker, it was formed in the late 80s, early 90s, and it has come to become big because of that period of Ramos and post-Ramos. So my business also grew up until the year 2000. The difference between the companies that grew big within the boundaries of the Philippines and my business was that my business was dependent on sales and growth on external circumstances. That means I had very few clients. These were business-to-business clients. There were very few. And so my business was dependent on global trends rather than domestic trends.
Okay.
No?
Okay.
So in 2000, prior to 2000, if you know, there was something called GATT.
Yes, of course.
General Agreement. Well, you're a trade commissioner. Why am I telling you that?
Tariffs and trade,
Yeah.
yes.
So General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, and those conversations moved on to WTO,
Yes.
where new compliances were supposed to come in, and new trade laws were supposed to set in. The whole world in the late 90s, up until the early part of this century, thought that all manufacturing will move to China. I mean, it was not thought. It was almost a reality that all of the Western developed world will buy all their material needs from China. And the rest of the world will just service this process of goods moving from the east to the west, and that's it. But it didn't happen. I mean, it didn't happen with such drastic effect. In the process, I had shut down my business because I thought, I don't want to go to China, neither did I want to go back to India. And I wanted to do things that were a little more satisfying to me personally. So I shut that business, and today I'm in a different profession.
Wonderful. And we will get to that different profession in
Yes,
a minute.
sir.
But this conversation has brought me to an article that I read in today's newspaper, and I just want to get your insight on this. Today's newspaper has an article on the IMF, which has asked the Philippines to ease its restrictions on foreign ownership of business in the Philippines,
Right.
to liberalize it a bit.
Right.
They feel that some of the regulations might be a bit outdated.
Correct.
Could you give us your opinion on that, being a former business owner yourself here in the Philippines?
Okay,
I
not
told you I was going to put you on the spot, my friend.
I am not used to expressing my opinion about my host country.
Okay,
This is-
very
which is
well.
not really my host country. Today it's my country. I love it. And so I have never expressed an opinion about, at least an opinion that is biased. I'm always game. I open up. I create learning. But here is my opinion today, since you put me on a spot.
Can be a constructive opinion.
It is, it is,
Something
it is.
That will help.
Well, think of this, that if a country has legislated 1,000 laws, for example, in the Book of Laws of Philippines, or the Constitution, there are 1,000 laws. A majority of them, in my opinion, were written over the last several decades after it got its freedom, right? Economic conditions globally and locally, political conditions globally and locally have been changing. But laws are not easy to change. Yeah? It takes a process. It takes sometimes months and years to pass a new bill in any country. Yeah? All the more so in a country like ours or Asian countries. No? It takes a while. So some of the laws in many countries, not just Philippines, even if you go to Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, or Cambodia, or even my country, India, they're archaic. They don't belong in today's time and day. So as far as ownership is concerned, business ownership is concerned, developed countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, USA, and probably many other European countries allow majority ownership. It's only those old-fashioned countries like the Middle East, etc., don't allow majority ownership. It is based on past fear. It's based on the GATT era. It's based on prior to the GATT era, GATT era. So I think, yes, I think we must reform our laws quickly today to, number one, allow global businesses, global individuals to have a little more leeway in terms of owning, in terms of building their dream, because any business that comes in, they're building a dream. They're building a vision. So a little more leeway to them, because whatever a foreigner invests in this country, there's very little that he can really take away. Think of it. If I put up a plant and I employ 3,000 people, sure, maybe companies will take the profits and move to another country and invest them, but the investment per se, the jobs that they create, the opportunities that they create, the economy that it turns or churns remains here. Does that make sense?
It does, very
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
very much. Indeed, in the 60s and 70s, the trend worldwide was to nationalize and for governments to own the whole
Yes,
economic
yes, true.
apparatus.
Yes.
And then there was this liberalizing trend where it said,
Yeah.
no, the governments are not made to run companies.
Exactly.
Companies should be privately run, et cetera, et cetera. And so this liberalization has been happening in many countries
Yeah.
around the world. Now, there's this debate whether free competition is actually good and healthy for the economy. Is it
Yeah.
good for there to be 4 or 5 companies doing the same thing?
Yeah.
And then the consumer will decide which company offers the best price and the best value,
Right.
and they will buy from that company. And
Yeah.
the other companies will then strive to offer a better price and a better value. Or should there be government intervention? Should the government say, this is the price that you can charge, you cannot charge anything more than this, because if you charge more, it's going to be unfair to the people who cannot afford to purchase your product. And so there's this ongoing debate whether international competition is fair or is unfair. Do we invite international companies here to compete openly and freely with Filipino companies, or do we restrict them in order to allow Filipino companies to grow? What are your views, Raj?
Okay, so the question is, should there be open ground for competition, or should there be control? So what amount of control there should be? Whether we open up the grounds or not for play, for equal play, whether we open up or not, no? Whether we keep controlling our borders, whether we keep tightening our laws or not, eventually market dynamics take a hand. So if you put up borders and saying that, hey, you guys cannot come in with cheaper medicine, for example, no? The medicines are a need within the boundaries of the country. Filipinos, 95 million Filipinos, will need cheaper medicines. 25 years ago, there were no generics. There were no generics. There was only these branded, high-end medicines sold. No? What was happening, though? What was happening was these medicines were coming in through alternate routes. Then the laws realized that, hey, those laws are not working for us. The people are clamoring for ease, convenience, and it's a global economic at play. So from that perspective, whether it was one industry or one sector, which is the medicine industry, take any other industry, appliances, telco, building, or even the consumer goods industry or the service industries, it will eventually open up. Market conditions will force any country to open up their doors. Countries like Cambodia, countries like Chile, countries like Vietnam, with very tight controls, are also easing down their borders. So I think it behooves any government to think ahead, to stay ahead of the curve and pass the law before people start breaking it. Are you with me? Before they start smuggling, before they start cheating. So create a law which makes it convenient for growth to happen.
Very insightful, I believe. That's really an insight on insights, as the title of our show says today.
Okay.
Raju, in India, a number of years back, when they started this liberalizing process,
Yeah.
they decided that they were going to make it easy for foreigners to form companies in India.
Yeah.
And they came up with this one-stop,
Yeah.
one-window
Yeah.
idea, where you go to one office,
Yeah.
and in that one office you fix everything that you need to fix in order to form a company in India. And I believe it's been working very, very successfully. Of course, the success of India
Yeah.
is noticeable to everyone.
Yeah.
Do you think, what is it like to open a business in the Philippines, for those of us who don't have that experience? Is it very bureaucratic or not? And what constructive ideas would you have in that regard?
Good question. And I do have the answer for it. So I'm not biding for time. I think we need to take a little break, yeah, because the answer is pretty big. But let me repeat the question so that the audience doesn't forget, and neither do I. The question is, India, back in the 20s, 20 years ago, they opened the borders. They made it easy, one-stop action shop. It's one-stop shop for registration. And then what about Philippines, how different it is compared to other places, or how difficult or easy it is to open a business? That's the question?
That is the question, and as soon as we come back from our break, we will hear the answer.
All right, see you. This is Expat Insights, and that's your host, Christian Clay Mendoza.
And this is your host, Raju.
Good morning. Welcome back to Expat Insights. I'm your real host, Raju Mandian. But this morning on Expat Insights, I'm your guest, and we have a guest host, Mr. Christian Clay Mendoza. And the subject matter is Insights on Insights. And Christian, the makeshift host today, is going to repeat the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Raju, welcome back to your show.
Okay.
Once again. We were talking about doing business in the Philippines, how easy it is, how difficult it is, what remains to be done. And there are a number of questions that many foreigners have. And I think that you have the insights, really.
Okay.
Insights on insights regarding this. So we were talking about how easy it is for a foreigner to open a business in the Philippines.
Okay.
We gave the example of India, where 20 years ago they simplified everything. All the red tape, all the bureaucracy was simplified. You go to one office, you register there, you do all the paperwork there, and you're done. How is it here in the Philippines? Has it improved? Is there room for more improvement? Give us, please, your experience.
All right. India, the architect of India's liberalization was the current Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and his sidekick that time, a gentleman called Chidambaram. Both of them very brilliant, and both of them still very active. No? Currently, the government or the country is slightly challenged in terms of growth. No? But in the 90s, when these two guys were the musketeers, so to say, they did a good job, and they have been very helpful to foreign direct investments in India. No? But I have no personal experience in putting up a business in India. I would assume that it is easier. I would assume that in the provinces of India or smaller cities of India where there is no technology reach, there would be challenged. I would also assume that just like the Philippines, any business may have to register not just with the Securities and Exchange Commission, but may also have to pass through municipal, barangay, fire clearances, etc., labor departments. No? So my assumption would be, I'm not very sure, that this still takes a little bit of an effort in India today. My assumption would be, no? Because I know that they are still not completely fluid. But putting up a business, maybe banks can help you, and it can be fast-tracked because India was really hungry, gutum in the 90s, to have foreign investments like many countries today are. No? Chile and Cambodia and even Vietnam is doing that. Philippines, I do have some first-hand experience. In the 80s, it was a bit challenging. A foreigner can only own 40% till date, unless his income or their income is 100% generated from abroad. That means if it's a complete dollar earner, then they can own a larger percentage. Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, the registration in SEC and DTI and BOI, by the way. So these are three departments. SEC is where you register the business. BOI helps foreign direct investors. DTI provides domestic business, name registration, etc. But I think all three of them today do work at finishing the process in a very short time. Smaller businesses have a bigger challenge. Larger businesses, where they fund the investments through banks, it's a shorter process. Certain provinces, I just heard a very young student talk about registering businesses in the provinces, and she said there are so many steps, no, that we are still working at downsizing them to maybe 10 to 15 steps. My assumption is that it will shorten in the coming years. Over the years, it has become easier. What is still difficult is the municipal, the barangay clearances. Those are challenging. BOI and DTI have a one-stop action center. You can go to them. They will give you all the requirements. They'll help you through. And it is advisable in the Philippines to hire a lawyer, a law firm, or an accounting firm who will hold your hand to get through the other knickknacks, to get the municipal, the barangays, etc.
Taxes and all those
things. The BIR registration.
Just for our viewers who are not familiar, our viewers who are expats and maybe not familiar with these terms, DTI is a Department of Trade and Industry here in the Philippines. The BOI depends on the DTI, and that's the Board of Investments. Department of Trade and Industry, and the Board of Investments. They've been doing a wonderful job in giving information. You ask the BOI, you're a foreign company owner, and you come to the BOI and you say, I'm interested in investing in the Philippines. This is my niche. This is what I do. The BOI is very, very good at giving them information where to invest, who their possible partners can be. I think they've done a great job, and the 6.1 growth rate of 2012 is partially thanks to that. What's your opinion on this?
On the 6.1% growth, or the fact that BOI
and on how the services have become more modern and how they help you to invest.
I have no idea who the current commissioner at BOI is. I did know people from the Bureau of Domestic Trade and DTI because I was a former chairman, and let's see if I remember, Senan Parlada, I think one of them, no, BDT. They're also working very hard to make it easy for businesses to register, no? And BOI is more of a marketing and a promotion arm rather than an actual hands-on implementer of law. So you're right. The investment, the growth of 6.1%, maybe it's not because of the ease of registering businesses or starting a business. I think it's more of trust, safety, and improved risk conditions in the Philippines because of what the impression President Aquino has created in the last 3-4 years. So that's my assumption. That's one. Because of him, because of his administration, because of his values, because of his drive to clean up the culture. No? I think that's the first driver. The second driver is, my belief is that water finds its own levels. If countries like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, I don't know if Brunei, etc., have grown massively in the last decade, it is just but natural that some of the investments will move to the Philippines. Yeah? Philippines is challenged because of airways and roadways, because it's not connected by land to these countries. There are lesser number of flights. The airports are smaller. So these are real challenges which are on the agenda. I'm not sure, but I would assume these are on the agenda. So the growth is President's efforts. Growth is because of regional influences. And the growth is because BPO industry, which is the business process outsourcing, is a big driver. If not for that, I think our growth would be less. So these are my insights, that these three are the main drivers for the growth last year.
Wonderful, wonderful. And do you predict further growth this year?
Oh, I'll have to call up my Professor Bernie Villegas or Vic Abola. In fact, right now, they're having a session at the University of Asia Pacific, and I can't tell you. I'm not an economist, and I can't tell you if 6.1 will become 6.9 or 7.1, but I can only pray.
Very good.
All right,
very
so
good.
I can only hope. But I really, truly wish from my heart that it grows, and that the average Juan de la Cruz's lifestyle well-being improves.
That's, I think, the bottom line and the most important driver in all of this. Now, tell us a little bit about Filipino workers. You had a company here. You probably employed a number of Filipino workers.
Yeah.
What is your experience with Filipino workers? How do they work? What were the good points? What were the points that need improvement? This is going to be something very interesting, not only for expats watching our show, but for Filipino workers themselves, to see how they are viewed.
Okay, I can compare Filipino workers to workers in India, workers in certain Asian countries, Vietnam to say, I would be able to compare, and Thailand maybe because it's quite similar, and to a little bit to Latin America and to the American worker. I don't know any other. So these are the ones. Now, the American culture is pretty direct. There's very little hierarchy there. That means the boss and employee relationship is almost at par. So it's healthy, and yet you can't get much work done if you don't know how to manage people in the U.S. Hiring and firing in the U.S. is easier. You don't like somebody, you kick them out.
Yeah.
In Latin America, certain countries, not all, not yours, I really don't know, it's a little more difficult. It's a little bit like Filipino culture, and there is that culture of mañana, same like Philippines. And hiring and firing is also tough in certain Latin American countries. No? The performance of the Latin American worker is probably a little bit behind the Filipino and the Asian worker, I would assume. I would assume. Because I didn't employ, but I had some businesses I worked with. The Indian worker thinks long term. Yeah, and the thing is, the Indian mindset has other investments, other avenues where they find or seek well-being. No? So to have them align to the corporate vision, etc., is a little more challenging in India than it is in the Philippines. No? Yeah? Because people think in India, the belief is that owners of companies, the board of directors and the chairman, or whoever holds equity is screaming. That is a belief, and it has to be worked upon. In the Philippines, it's a lot. 90+% of the companies are family-oriented. The culture, the way to run a company in the Philippines is to run it like a large family. That means the hierarchy levels are high. People treat elders, the people in power, with a lot more respect. And that can be a bane or a boon depending on the outlook of the managers. I would like to convert that into a boon rather than a bane, you know, because then your trust levels are high, yeah, your engagement levels are high, and so this is true also of the Thai and the Vietnamese people. The advantage that the Filipino has is communication, yeah,
English.
because the global community that goes and settles down in Thailand takes a while until they can work through the language and the culture.
Yes.
You know? It's easier to do that. So those are the plus points or the pro side of putting up businesses or running large businesses in the Philippines.
Indeed, here in the Philippines, there is a very communal sense.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, Raju,
Yeah.
when people work for a corporation, it
Yeah.
is like a family.
Yeah.
And they expect you to treat them as such. They expect you to,
Yeah.
you know, you do outings and you do all these different things that I hadn't seen in other countries, and which I like and which I believe do make it more community-like. No, but are there any drawbacks to this, though?
Well, Clay, besides running this show, I also do I do mentoring, coaching, and training in cross-cultural communication and diversity. I've been blessed enough to be able to do that kind of work. And many a times, a foreign executive asked me, Raju, how do I get around? So here's what I tell them. I said, a Filipino employee or a Filipino person, they have many values that create their personality. One of them is what is known as makajos, makatao, makapamilya. No, these are very important. And so when a boss or the board of directors or new investors come in, they should understand that they can lead a company or a company's engagement levels or productivity based on these 3 or 4 powerful values. That means I can have my team be gung-ho in what I want to desire as long as it has this long-term high-purpose alignment. You know? Because most of us, like European countries or Western countries, we are very task-oriented. We're very results-based. No? That has its pros, but if you want to adapt to this culture, you need to understand these values and then create a results-based culture.
In more Anglo countries, more European countries, it is a good thing to be direct, to be to the point.
Yeah.
If there's something your employee is doing that you don't like, you tell them right then and there in no uncertain terms, and you expect them to correct it.
Yeah.
Does that work here in the Philippines? And if not, why?
Yeah. Okay. A large portion of the Filipino person, we are also what we call that the word paramdam. We feel, we are very intuitive, we are very sensitive, no? And that means we will know if you're uncomfortable. When I say we, of course, because I'm saying I'm thinking myself as a Filipino like you are.
Very good.
So when we say sensitive, we are sensitive, and so directness is not an asset here. It's not an asset here. Context is the asset, no? That means the story is not important. The context, in what perspective why do you want me to do this? No? I need to know that. So in the Western countries, you said it's good. I'm not sure if it's good, but it is a fact there.
It's the way it is.
It's a fact there, no?
Yeah.
So a Western person or an Anglo person or a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon person, or a person from one of those task-oriented, performance-based culture comes in here, he must just create a context. He must recognize the sensitivity. In Thailand and Philippines, what is known as saving face value. So The way you provide feedback, the way you do corrective action, the way you delegate has to be context-based, has to be focused towards the human in the person you are helping improve.
A lot of Western expats often ask, what is this losing face all about? What does it mean? How do I avoid it? Can you give us some insights on what is losing face? And how do you make someone lose face? And how do you avoid it? A lot of expats are going to want to know, how do you avoid it? Because sometimes they fall into that trap without even knowing it. And they've insulted or offended someone, and they don't even know what they did or what they said. Tell us about that, Raju.
The second aspect of our culture, again, a culture keeps changing, by the way, Clay. It's not constant. It is what it is today. Tomorrow it may be something else because of the influence of BPO, because of lots of foreigners like you and me, half foreigners coming in. It changes a bit, no? So there are two aspects to it: individualistic and collectivist. No? Asian countries, many Asian countries, are very collectivist culture. That means we work in groups, we think in groups, and we progress in groups. Teams of 5, teams of 6, family. Remember, makapamilya, that means I'm family-oriented. While the Western culture is very individual, that means it's for me, I'm going to succeed, I made it, I did it on my own. Here, the culture is, we did it, it's for us, we're going to this together, sama-sama tayo, sabay-sabay tayo, di ba, pakitulong, no? So these are the cultures. Now, losing face or saving face, when you scold an individual, like if you use harsh or strict words on an individual, you are slapping all 5, 7 of his little clique, his little team. So the way to resolve for a person from a direct or the task-related person is for him to isolate the challenge, have a one-on-one conversation, a dialogue, and remember that this culture is very intuitive. So you don't need to have a full blasted disclosure of what's wrong. You can just sit and express it in terms of feelings. Right? How do you feel and how do you correct it? What are the opportunities here for growth? What are your ideas? And I guarantee you this, that us here, we will resolve it because we will see the big picture right away. No? And the resolution will come faster.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is a very, very important point. I think a lot of expats are going to thank you for this.
Well, they can call me for one-on-one coaching on this.
They can call you or they can read one of your books.
Well, in the books,
that topic right now.
We've got like about 5 minutes left.
In those 5 minutes, Raju is going to tell us about 3 books that he has authored. I'm sure very few of our viewers know about this, but I do want Raju to tell us about these books. The Heart of Public Speaking, The Heart of Humor, Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs. Wonderful, wonderful titles. Please tell us a little bit more about your books, and can we buy them somewhere? Where can we purchase them?
I'm not selling them right here. For a fact, they're all in the bookstores, and you can call me or call this station if you want a large number of copies. So the first book is on public speaking, and it just doesn't talk about how to present to a business audience, but also how to influence people for good. So it's a little bit of public speaking moving into leadership. So it's like that. That's the kind of book it is. Very creative. It's not your usual do this thing. It's a lot of storytelling and a lot of motivation in there. And so examples and then how to do. But more on how to influence. That's the first book. And when I finished the first book, I realized that humor or happiness or laughter or lightness is very important in any relationships. The moment someone laughs, their trust levels go up. That means our neuroscience, we are so wired that laughter and happiness increases rapport and trust. So I wrote the book for that niche principle of rapport building and trust building using humor. The third one, quickly, is about, of course, starting of small businesses. It doesn't tell you whether you should go to BOI, DTI, or BDT, or SEC, but it tells you how to put together a plan. It tells you how to inspire yourself. It tells you how to be driven and get what you want to get in life.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs.
There you have it. There you have it. 3 books by Raju, which I very much recommend that you purchase. Raju, I thank you for coming to your show this morning. It's been very, very insightful. It's been a pleasure having you here and being here with you.
Christian, it's been a pleasure for me because nobody's asked me about me in the last 3 years. I've been asking people about themselves, and here I am. So thank you for exposing me, which is maybe good, maybe not, but only the good Lord will know. So thank you for watching Expat Insights. I'm your host, Raju Mandian. I have been thus exposed in the last 40 minutes. Next week on Expat Insights, we'll have Mr. Rainier Gloor and Mrs. Margarita Gloor. Rainier will talk about the future of the pharma industry in the Philippines, and Margarita Gloor will talk about her NGO projects. They are both Swiss, and they also have been in this country for a very long time and are doing good. So good night, mabuhay, and have a great weekend. Christian, I want to explain why I say good night.
Please.
Many people ask me why, because as an Indian, I grew up in the English culture. In the English culture, you say that if you're going to see someone for the last time on that day, if you know that I'm not going to see you after lunch, then I must wish you good night.
Even if it's 9 a.m.
Even if it's 9 a.m., but as long as I know I'm not going to see you after this.
Well, we're not sure about that, but good night, Raju.
But good night to my audience. I'm very sure that I won't see them. So good night, mabuhay. Have a great weekend. And that's Christian Clay Mendoza. I'm your host, Raju Mandian. Thank you for watching Expat Insights.